the very last topic of the day and our predictions for the Euros.
Yay. So for those not remotely interested in football, thanks for tuning in this week.
Yeah.
See you next time. But, we thought, given that it's the start of the Euros, big tournament, England, Wales and Scotland are all there. And so we thought we'd just have a chat about what we think might happen, what our predictions are. So, I mean, obviously it seems like it's potentially quite an open tournament this year, in that there's sort of 6 or 7 teams that are reasonably short in the betting as in terms of winning the tournament. There's probably 6 or 7 teams that could. Having said that, I mean, the European Championships has traditionally thrown up some surprises with complete outsider teams, 80-1 shots winning numerous times over the years. So there's bound to be surprises.
Yeah, Greece,
Hungary. Was it Hungary?
Don't remember Hungary. No.
Who beat West Germany in the 70s?
Czechoslovakia.
Sorry.
Yeah,
of course it was. With was he called Podenka, the guy that did the little chip?
Yeah, that's right. And it then got named after him.
Palenka or
Podenka,
yeah. I think he's a national hero in the Czech Republic, isn't he, for that little dink penalty in the penalty shootout. So so 1 or 2 big surprises over the years, and there's bound to be some this year. There's bound to be one of the big teams that doesn't get through the group stage or goes out in the second round against a minnow or whatever. That's bound to happen.
Well, we got Netherlands, France, and Portugal in the same.
France, Portugal, Germany.
France, Portugal, Germany.
And Hungary.
Yeah.
No, this championship, so-called group of death. There's always one in every major tournament. So France, Germany, Portugal, Hungary. Obviously, 2 of France, Germany, and Portugal are expected to go through, but who knows? Of course, there are the third place.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, the other surprise one was Denmark, wasn't it, in '92? And
yes, of course.
And they only came in because I think Yugoslavia was kicked out because of the Balkans War. So they came in as a wild card and went on and won it.
Absolutely, with the Laudrup brothers.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's at least 3 major shocks over the years. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a shock this year. Maybe England will win.
So let's start off then with who you believe will be the top scorer.
So my money is not just metaphorically speaking, but my money is literally already on Lukaku of Belgium, Romelu Lukaku, ex-Manchester United player. Had a very good season in Italy. Been banging goals all season, in the form of his life, prime of his life, and will be probably set up for loads of goals by Kevin De Bruyne, assist king De Bruyne, and others in a decent Belgium team. So so my money's on Lukaku for that. Obviously, I hope it's Harry Kane. Harry Kane scores 10 and we win the championship. But I mean, there's Mbappe of France, there's Griezmann of France, there's a number of others, Immobile of Italy, and various others who who could take it. Memphis Depay of the Netherlands and others. So
do you think?
So quite a few. But my money's on Lukaku.
Do you think? Do you think Netherlands will get far enough for?
I think they'll cruise through their group, because I think they're in a reasonably weak group. I think they'll cruise through the group, but I don't think they're a particularly strong Netherlands team. Maybe wrong about that. I don't see them getting, perhaps beyond the quarterfinals. I may be wrong on that, but I don't see them winning or getting perhaps getting as far as the semis. Who's your tip for top goal scorer, Jace?
Thomas, it's always really difficult this, because I'm not. The reason I don't bet is because if I put money on a horse to win the national, a cow will win it. So the reasons that I don't bet are very obvious. But obviously, looking from the outside, I really hope that Harry Kane or Marcus Rashford or obviously one of the England players, it's a shame that Scotland and Wales haven't got a really prolific goal scorer. I know Wales have got Gareth Bale, but it is a shame that they both haven't got somebody more prolific that could possibly take them, quite a distance. I think a lot of people are ignoring, Cristiano Ronaldo. He scored 30 plus goals again for Juve in this last season. Kylian Mbappe. I mean, if you give him the right service, he's going to have, it's going to have fun, isn't he? To be fair, especially some against the defences. I mean, the obvious thing about the European Championships is they tend to be harder than the World Cup to get a long way, because there's a lot more stronger teams. So you can probably get to quarter, semi-finals in a World Cup, and sometimes you don't really come across anybody who's recognised as being world beaters. Whereas in the European Championships, the chances of that happening, I know England, for example, if they want to get to the final and win it, they've got a hard route to take, given how it's going to play out from winners and runners up in different groups. So yeah, I mean, you've got Robert Lewandowski, but I just don't think that Poland will do enough to enable him to come close to being top scorer, unless, of course, he has a good run very early on. So there are some great goal scorers, and as you rightly pointed out, it does apply. For example, in Lukaku's situation, it does have a lot to do with who's behind you and creating the chances.
And how far you go in the tournament.
And how far you go in the tournament, of course. So before we come on to the team that you expect to win it, who are your dark horses?
I suppose, teams like Croatia, for example, or perennial dark horses over the last 10 or 12, maybe 15 years, but have always outperformed their odds and had some great players, been one of the stronger teams in Europe in the last few years. And of course, beat us in the semi-finals of the last World Cup and lost in the final. They're in the group with England, of course. Our first game up on Sunday against Croatia. So they're a dark horse. And Italy are not particularly fancied going into it. They may struggle in terms of goals. They tend to play one up top and with Immobile, who's obviously particularly immobile. But they're unbeaten in, I think it's 23 games going into the tournament.
But Robert Mancini's done an amazing job. He's turned the cultural stereotype of Italy on its head in terms of the way they play football now, possession based, on the front foot. So I think Italy are one of my dark horses. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Certainly a form team,
Yes.
They're perhaps the form team going into it. I don't fancy Germany. I don't think they're obviously sort of past masters at coming good when it comes to major championships. People talk of them having a very strong mentality and they're good at winning. But I just don't feel their squad is strong enough compared to squads of the past of Germany that have won tournaments. I don't think they have anything like the quality that they've had in the past, or compared to other squads, including England. So I don't see Germany winning it.
I think one thing about Germany there, and I think as you pointed out, is that as they get further and further in tournaments, they have the experience, but they have the game management, and I think they can suss out the opposition and know what they have to do, whether it means going to penalties or whether it means taking the chance in extra time or whatever it is. They seem to have that mentality and ability to identify within their opponents what needs to be done. And as we saw when the World Cup, I think in 2014 in Brazil, the way they absolutely destroyed Brazil because they'd done their homework.
Yeah.
And instead of letting Brazil go on the front foot, they exploited the fact that Brazil were really weak at the back. And they did it in a fantastic. It was brilliant. Just watching it on YouTube now, 7 years later, the dismantling of Brazil, never been seen before. It was superb.
It was extraordinary, but I mean, conversely, they're the opposite of Italy in that they're going into the tournament with kind of record poor form for a German team. They just recently lost 6-0 to Spain. And they also lost a World Cup qualifier to North Macedonia.
Yeah. Although I think North Macedonia,
yeah,
don't take your eyes off North Macedonia. I don't think they're obviously going to win it, but I think that they've really impressed me. And of course, the other thing about Germany is they just beat Lithuania 7-0 a few days back. So they're not going in on the back of total bad form.
No.
But yeah, I probably don't see them winning the tournament. But in terms of sort of far bets, if you had basically you're going to lose your house in the morning, and you saw that there was a team that you could possibly put $1,000 on to save your house, who would it be? I mean, I'm talking about the wild cards here still.
Yeah, well,
one team, Tom.
There's a couple of things there, Jace. I mean, if you're going to lose your house, don't bet any money on the European Championship.
No, I understand that, but that was just the way in which I was phrasing it. But what is your big wild card? If someone coming out of the darkness, what would it be?
Well, if there's that phrase. If you were going to put your mortgage on something, then I'd probably say France. Although Belgium are my actual team that I think will win. But I mean, if you were going to put your mortgage on, if you had to put your mortgage on something, I'd probably say France.
Go for the wild card first.
Current World Cup holders, and have got an incredibly strong team, and over the last sort of 15-20 years have been regular winners of big tournaments. But if you had to try and put some money on something at decent odds, yes, which I think is what you're asking there, yes, a bit of a dark horse, I'd probably say Croatia.
Interesting.
Not huge odds. I think they're around 16-1 or something. But
no, interesting. I mean, I've sort of been doing a bit of reading around over the last 24 hours in preparation for this, just to get my head around, who's there and what they're about. And it's interesting how the number of times that Turkey and Denmark have come up with some pundits arguing that Denmark probably probably haven't got the clinical striker, but we saw when they played England, didn't we? Whenever it was in the last 12 months or so, they beat us 2-1. They really outplayed us. They held the ball well. Christian Eriksen obviously is at the heart of that team. So I think from my little knowledge of having really looked at, and obviously not studying betting as I don't, but Turkey and Denmark possibly are the Greece of 2020, 2021 as it is.
Yeah, so they could both outplay their odds. I want to give a little shout out to Wales and Scotland too, who I think both are improved teams. Wales over a bit of a longer period of time, 3-4 years now. Wales have been a decent team. Scotland more recently have turned things around and improved dramatically, I'd say. And I'd like it. Wouldn't it be fabulous to see all three home nations get through the group stage at least?
Yes, absolutely.
And into the knockout rounds. And it would be great to see. Imagine 2 or 3 home nations in the quarterfinals. It's going to get really exciting for us all. So, and I think Wales and Scotland have both got reasonable chances of getting through the group stages into the second round, maybe into the quarterfinals.
I think it'll be amazing. I think England will get through to the knockouts. I think Wales might get through for the skin of their teeth, but I don't think Scotland will. I think Scotland, if they go behind, they're really going to struggle because they haven't got anybody up front. They got. Don't get me wrong. This, McTominay, um, John McGinn. They got some great players in that team in terms of club teams, but I just don't think they've got the spike at the top end that if things go against them, that they can dig themselves out of a hole. Whereas you've got obviously you've got the magic of Bale, you've got pace of Dan James, so Wales are capable of, I think, playing intelligent football and getting through to the next round. Although I don't think they'll probably get much further than that. But not Scotland, not for me.
I mean, Wales have got a tough group, really. Italy, Turkey, and Switzerland. I think quite a tough group. Arguably,
not high
Scotland could have an easy go. I mean, Scotland got England, obviously, in the group with England, Czech Republic, and Croatia. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Scotland get a result against either England or Croatia. The so-called big two in the group. I wouldn't be surprised if Scotland got something, including against England. It's always tough playing those home internationals, as they used to be called. The home nation. Always tough.
I'll put my head above the parapet here.
Play Scotland.
I'll put my head above the parapet here. It's Scotland or Czech Republic for the last spot in that group.
Yeah.
I think England and Croatia will get through fairly comfortably. Yeah. I understand exactly what you're saying, but again, I think the experience will and the talent for both Croatia and England will be enough. And it's Modric's probably last furore as well, so he's going to be, keeping the ticking going in that midfield. So I think
So who's your prediction as the overall winner then, Jace?
I think if you're going to go with class, experience, I think it's hard not to see past France. I think they do a terrific team. I think this is probably Ronaldo's last hurrah. So I think Portugal will be in there in thereabouts. Obviously, you've got the obvious ones. You've got the Spain, like we talked about Germany. I don't think the Netherlands will challenge. So it's and I think Italy. I think Italy, as we've already spoken about as well. So, but in terms of England, I think they should get at least to the semi-finals, as long as they get everybody playing well and everybody shrugging away the pressure that comes from being an England footballer, and certainly in terms of the media. The media does no favours at all for England teams of the past. But I think my overall final, and I don't know how it's going to pan out in terms of who meets who, but I think France versus Italy or France versus Portugal will probably be the final. Yeah,
I agree. France, you've got to say, are incredibly strong. The marginal favourites with the the bookmakers ahead of England and Belgium. They're very tough, proven winners and an incredibly strong squad with scoring ability from around the pitch. So, France are going to be very, very tough to beat.
I think a France-Belgium final, actually, if England don't get there, I think a France-Belgium final will be terrific.
I mean, it'd be great to have any combination of France, England, and Belgium in a final.
Yes, it would,
terrific, wouldn't it?
It would, mate.
Really, I desperately hope it's going to be England. There's a lot of, I think, heavy lifting done by Harry Kane in terms of the England team and our scoring abilities. Hope he stays fit and well and is banging in goals. We certainly got a good, strong squad. Lots of young, very talented players, and I think a very good manager. Though I think he's left out one or two players from the squad that I might have included. I think England have got a chance. I think Italy have a chance. I don't particularly fancy Germany or Spain or the Netherlands. I don't particularly fancy Portugal, to be honest. So I think France, England, Italy, or Belgium. I think it's going to be one of those four. I'll be proven to be completely wrong because it will end up being Denmark or something, some complete outsider. Anyway, my money's on Belgium. I think the combination. I'm a huge fan of De Bruyne. I think he's probably the best midfielder in the world at the moment. Incredible, talented midfielder. Obviously, creates so many chances for others as well as scoring himself. Lukaku's probably in the best form of any striker going into it, and I think the combination of the two could win it for Belgium. So yeah, my money's on Belgium. That's my tip.
I would have agreed with you, and like you say, I think they've got extremely good chance. My only thing about Belgium is their over dependence upon De Bruyne. If De Bruyne is not functioning, or De Bruyne is marked out of the game, or if he gets an injury, and I know he's carrying, obviously, just had this issue with his fractured cheekbone. If he's not on top form, they're talisman. Whereas I think
they got Hazard, of course. They got
Eden
Hazard.
He hasn't done anything since he left Chelsea, and he's had so many injuries. He's hardly played. Don't get me wrong; he might come to this tournament and be. But I think that as all-round squads, I think France and England have the best. The only problem I think for England is the loss of Harry Maguire, because he's so important for them at the back. And it's picking up on the point you said that there's some of the people that Gareth Southgate hasn't picked, and who would they be?
James Ward-Prowse, in particular. I would have included him. I mean, he's relatively local to us here in Dorset, being at Southampton. Yeah, one or two others, but I mean, he's probably and I think personally would say, that. I mean, people say he's just a free kick merchant, but his all-round game is far more than that. And I think he's had another exceptional season. And with I'd love to see him with his name's escaped me. The Villa.
Jack Grealish.
Jack Grealish. Why is his name gone out of my head? So I'd love to see Jack Grealish and James Ward-Prowse in the same England team, because Grealish should win all the penalties because he falls over for a living, and I mean that's partly because he's incredibly talented and goes past players and makes things happen by doing so and gets fouled, but he also goes down rather easily, to use a euphemism, and so Grealish and Ward-Prowse in the same team would be pretty lethal, because Grealish should win about 10 free kicks around the edge of the box every game, and Ward-Prowse would stick 4 of them away at least. So anyway, but just on that point, I really hope Grealish is selected to play. I hope he's not just used as a 20-minute sub at the end to affect games. I think he warrants a place in the lineup. He's got something different from the other players, I think, in terms of going past people and doing quick 1-2s, and we've seen that in the friendlies. He's got something extra. Stick him in the team, Gareth.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Jack Grealish is phenomenal talent. I think I would have left James Ward-Prowse out purely because we've got Phil Foden, and I think you can have too many luxuries. So I would have, bearing in mind, for me, the big disappointment was not taking Mason Greenwood, because Mason Greenwood in those situations, people aren't used to Mason Greenwood. They haven't come up against him. He can score with both feet. He's developed amazingly in the last 12 months as a club player in terms of dropping back and filling in. So, I think Mason Greenwood, hopefully, if he kicks the right mentality and kicks fit, would be an extraordinary talent in the future. And it's a shame he's not at this tournament.
He could be a big player in a couple of years' time, couldn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Tournament, next World Cup, whatever, he could be a big player for England, for sure.
Exactly.
Well, a summer of excitement. We got the end of the French Open tennis. We've got Wimbledon after that. We've got golf and all sorts of other sports, and of course the Euros, and then we've got the Olympics. So a sporting feast to enjoy. Let's hope all 3 of our home nations that are taking part do well. That's the main thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And their fans are happy. and they feel encouraged by their performances, definitely.
Yeah, and by their supporters.